wasn't a mistake, I don't think. It was just pure ignorance. I made friends with a man named Finch. How about that? That's what I want us to hear.
This is a moment. What did they have in common? Their mettle is being tested. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. That word, if we won't use it that way, but you have to think about this. The Bible says God cannot tempt a man with evil. It's a trial, tribulation. Count it all joy when you fall into diverse trials or tribulations. Knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience, but let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. So God tells us, be thankful for hard times that test your mettle, and we have to ask ourselves these questions. We read 1 Kings 17 and say, if I was in the middle of a 3-year famine, and the famine was caused because the sins of the national leadership, would I grumble, or would I say, boy, I'm thankful that I have this opportunity to minister to one of God's people? Which is what we should always be doing, ministering to each other and ministering to those who are in need outside of the kingdom. And then someone says this, that the two of them together had their own sins. And I have to just go ahead and say it now, because I don't know if the slide is going to come up. I can't remember if I put it in or not. And I'll wait. This is something else, too, when you basically say about, we're both at rock bottom and we're starving. That's what we've got in common. This is what they have in common. Elijah and the widow had their own sins. Romans 3:23, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. John 8:7, Jesus said to the people, he said, whoever among you is without sin, let him first cast a stone at her. And while we have that note, I want us to think about that. And in connection to people like Brian Edwards, I have this note here about Brian. Y'all remember back when they dropped Baptist off of the church sign? And I have in the bulletin, Church of Christ folk just don't understand what a big deal that was for Brian Edwards. His dad is Craig Edwards. Boy, Craig Edwards was big in the North Carolina area for independent fundamental Baptists, and for, like I'm saying, Craig Edwards' golden boy turncoat. He was big. And so I basically had to view myself and say, I have things that I need to work on, and I have blind spots in my thinking like anybody else does. And, as I'm making my way and I'm trying to please God, I would just hate that anything that I do good, there's a collection of people out there and they say, that Caleb Roberts ain't going to burn in hell. You got to give them something. So when you put these two in a room together and they're at rock bottom and they're starving to death, what do they have in common? Well, they have in common they got sin going on. But I will say this. The note that I made, and they say, well, they still got sin. They sin like the rest of us. Like, this is a monumental thing that she...
Okay, thank you for being with me tonight. I'm Johnny Robertson. We are live from Virginia. I had to think a minute. I just came in from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and we're broadcasting here in the Virginia area. And since we're on YouTube, we can go ahead and say that we're broadcasting into the Rocky Mount area as well. Just as a note to you, 23 minutes has gone by on our little test program there. And so I have to tell you, it's been a long couple of days, and we were in Texas and should have been back here on Wednesday, and they had a huge storm in Texas, so we were delayed for a couple of days, and we flew in on Friday night, up by 5 o'clock on Saturday morning, work all day, and drive to Raleigh, North Carolina, almost to Rocky Mount, which is going to be probably 2 hours and 20 minutes. Go to bed, get up and drive on to Rocky Mount, and then I'll tell you some of the details, and then drive back from Rocky Mount here to Martinsville, which is a 3.5 hour drive. And I really do love the individuals who watch our broadcast. And the reason I say that to you is there is nothing else that would get me out at 9 o'clock at night and keep me out till 10 and then keep me up for I don't know how long, because of the fact that we're doing something so special in our mind that it just jacks us up to the point where you never know what time you're going to go to sleep, because we think about the information that we're giving you and we think about the effects of it. And so tonight, if I decide that I'm going to go for 30 minutes, then you're going to get to hear Caleb in a fascinating lesson that was preached in the pulpit here in Martinsville while I was away. And we have the luxury of, when we're away, we have a link that they share, and I got to hear Joey and Caleb both preach wonderful lessons this morning. People repented out loud, and I'm pretty sure there was some repenting going on in their pews in the minds. And I told them that those were really, as the proverb writer says, wounds of a friend. And I didn't think they hurt nearly as much the way he handled it. And so you'll get to see that at some point. I think the name of the lesson was called "Don't Say You Die for the Gospel," and then it says "if," and I know there was a bunch of things that if you don't do them now, there's no way that you can even start to say that you would die for the gospel. So tonight we have I guess you might say, we have the rest of the story. And I really don't have all the things queued up, so let me just begin with this. Tonight we're going to talk about a gentleman that we haven't discussed before. He is actually a minister in the Truth of God organization. That's Gino Jennings, also known as the First Church of Our Lord Jesus Christ, headquarters on 5th Avenue, Northern Philadelphia, downtown. It's really just 8-10 minutes, depending on traffic, from downtown Philadelphia. And so we're going to talk about, I don't really actually know right now the gentleman's name, but we're going to be talking about Pine Bush, New York, and that's where he came from, and I met him in Houston. And so we're also going to basically be discussing what's going to be happening in March in Texas, and I intend to be there, Lord willing, and that would be another Gino Jennings Southeastern Conference, and we'll talk about that as we go along. And so the thing that I need to queue up right quick is on the internet, so give me a second. And we'll basically get to the point that has everybody all jacked up, and that's fine. That's what we want. I don't know if y'all realize it or not. All of y'all that are talking trash, that's fine. I don't really think the Nation of Islam guy that Caleb and I both have debated, I really don't think he coined this phrase. He may have. Every knock is a plug. So if you're talking badly about us, it's all right. It's basically, sometimes when you've got an agent, they will tell you do something drastic. And, these movie stars will do something drastic, and all it is a stunt, a publicity stunt. Well, this is not a publicity stunt. What you're seeing here, I'm not going to let you hear it, but what you see going on here has gotten all kinds of folk thinking about the Church of Christ in Martinsville, Virginia, Danville, Virginia, the work here in this area, Caleb and I in particular. People are talking all over. I mean, there are websites. I have no idea how many hundreds of thousands of views are going on since this video took place, where I was at 5th Avenue in Philadelphia, and I was bearing my soul, apologizing for the things that I think in my own conscience, which is none of your business. My conscience is between me and God, and I felt it necessary going forward. And so this is some of the rest of the story. A lot of people have already made up their mind about what really is the end result. Let me finish this little thing here. That's me taking my hat off to Gino Jennings. And it's just like, I don't understand. There he is sitting there. I don't understand for the life of me. Jesus can tell a crowd about a Gentile centurion and tell that that Gentile centurion's faith is the greatest that he has seen in Israel. And don't you know that they hated on him? But I just want you to think about that. Why are you hating on me for giving a man his due? This guy can, people say that we get ourselves in trouble. We cause our own self trouble because we say the things that we say. But listen, can I not be allowed to say what I think and tell you what I think is the truth? This is one of the best communicators that I've ever heard. And as we go along tonight, we're going to talk about the Southeastern Convention, and I'm going to make a challenge to some of you folk. And so we're going to begin with a little bit of information that I hope will help you to understand better. We'll come back to Pine Bush a little bit later. Let's look at this. Can you see that? Acts chapter 9, verse 15. But the Lord said unto him, this would be Ananias, Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him what great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Now, to me, that is a tremendous piece of information right there. We're talking about Paul, and I guess you can tell that Ananias is kind of having a bad day here. Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man how much evil he hath done to thy saints and Jerusalem. Okay, so here's the picture that I want you to visualize for a minute, or let's contemplate. So you've got an individual that people have been hearing a lot of things about, all of the evil that he's been involved in. And so you've got another man here who is now in a position where Jesus is telling him, you know what, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the street where he is, and I want you to assist the man, Saul of Tarsus. And now, look, but the Lord said unto him, even though you've heard of the evil things that he's done to the saints and in Jerusalem, I want you to go your way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me to bear my name before the Gentiles, the kings, and the children of Israel. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Now, here's where I am. I happen to think that Gino Jennings is a modern day Marshall Keeble. Now, y'all need to write that down because a lot of y'all have no idea who Marshall Keeble is. But he is one of the most famous black evangelists, pretty much, that you'll find in the 1900s, 1800s. I think he was born in the 1800s, lived into the 1900s probably. I think he lived into his 90s. I have heard him on tape, have his preaching sermon outlines, and I have a good friend who patterned himself after him, after Marshall Keeble, and his name is John Shannon. And Gino Jennings is a very powerful communicator. Now, is there anything wrong with me thinking that this man, if he could be converted, will be a great, great asset to the kingdom of God? He already is talking to presidents. He's been talking to the last, I know Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Trump first go around, and the second go around now talking to him. He's been taken off of YouTube several times. His lawyers get him back on. And what is he doing just to get him off? He's talking right straight to them and tell them all the things that they need to do. And when I'm listening to him, he can preach about the church of Christ as well as, I don't ever hear anybody preaching a lesson about the true church and the fact of denominationalism being sin and you're going to hell. He says it straight out. You're going, and he names every denomination just like I do, just like Caleb does, just like John Shannon does. And if you want to text me or whatever and say, well, why are you leaving out so-and-so? You tell me somebody else who is on a regular basis, online, on air, on television, from the highways and the byways, outside tents, things of that nature. If they're telling people that there is but one true church and there is but one body that you're supposed to be in, which is the same thing as the church, and if you're in a denomination, then you are not saved. And you need to seriously consider what you're doing. Now, listen, y'all, we've been doing this for years. I have never not done this. Everywhere I have been, I have caused trouble. What does that mean? I have basically told these individuals, listen, if you're not in the body of Christ, which is the church of Christ, then you're not saved. You're in some man-made organization. Memphis, Tennessee. What happened? Folks said they were going to fire me for my preaching. Had the police called on me at Walmart down in South Haven, Mississippi. They're basically trying to throw me out of Walmart because I'm handing out tracts out on the Walmart parking lot. Every time I go in the Walmart at South Haven, there's somebody trying to get money from me. My wife's in there shopping, and finally a manager comes out and says, look, if we're calling the police if you don't get off the parking lot. And I'm just, hey, listen, I'm moving as fast as I'm going to because my wife's in there shopping. And my sister-in-law, bless her heart, there's one thing she can do, and that is she can write a letter to someone concerned. And I got a call from the management at that Walmart. They came over there and had me point out the person that did that, and they were going to fire that individual. I said, I don't want them to be fired. Well, why would they do that? Because the Church of Christ is very well known in Bentonville, Arkansas, where Walmart is from. As a matter of fact, Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma and those states, the Church of Christ is as well known as anywhere in the United States. And they did not want to lose any customers, a lot of churches of Christ in Memphis, Tennessee. So I'm saying, now that wasn't really that much trouble to me, but I'm saying the folks over there at the Coral Lake Church of Christ, the congregation that meets at Coral Lake, they didn't like that. They didn't like me stirring things up, door knocking and whatnot. Well, guess what? They don't exist anymore. They were already going by the way because they wouldn't evangelize. And so, but I'm saying, if you're mad about me saying that about Gino Jennings, well, in a bit, maybe I can do it right now, I'm not sure. I thought I had a slide where my phone number was up, but I don't. We'll have a slide where you can text me and say, well, this preacher here, and I may disagree with you. I may know this particular preacher that you're talking about. But when I really think about it, there's not too many that come to mind that are, I'm saying, doing what people like Marshall Keeble did, what people do in the book of Acts. Why? I don't know why. It makes no sense, because you're never going to be able to reach kings and the children of Israel, Gentiles, do these kinds of things unless you're out doing this particular thing. But I want you to think about this. Here's Ananias. And Ananias is actually standing in the way of the Lord's work. And that's what I want you to think about tonight when we're talking right now. By you talking about me and questioning what I'm doing in Philadelphia and things of that nature. Is it possible that you're actually standing in the way when you could be, in fact, helping out? How do you know how this is going to end? I mean, would you have ever thought that I would be spending a couple of hours with him before an assembly? What preacher has a couple of hours before he's going to preach, especially to the size of the congregation that he was preaching there? And we're actually talking about the terms of a debate that he is going to have. What preacher that has 110 million views on one of his YouTube channels would even mess around with you? I mean, if you're really trying to say, what were you doing, Johnny? You think about what you would do if you could get in this position. What would you do? There's nobody, I don't know anybody, and I'm just saying this, I don't mind being corrected. I just feel pretty confident that there's not anybody that is in a matchup with somebody who has 110 million views on their website. And you have their attention, or your preacher has their attention, or any organization in the entire brotherhood in the world has the attention of somebody of that magnitude. Well, does that make me feel big? No. It is a burden on my mind, on my body, It is a very, very serious thing. And then on top of that, let me let you look at another scripture. Let me kill Johnny here just a minute. Okay, here we go. Now, you know, some of you people would have me killed. I just know that you would. Have you ever really read Acts chapter 21 and considered what happened when Paul came to Jerusalem with alms for his nation? Here he is, he loves the Jews, he knows they're hating on him, and he knows that one of the reasons they hate on him is because he was in fact a very, very terrible persecutor. But I want you to think about this. Wouldn't it be a great thing? Wouldn't you rejoice if somebody like Gino Jennings were to be converted? And you know, you might say, well, he has caused a lot of people to believe error. Well, that's true. But you know what? The Church of Christ is not doing much better right now. If you really start looking around, you'll find out that during COVID, people did not. After COVID, half of the people didn't come back. Third didn't come back. You might say, well, more than a half came back for me. Well, good for you. But if you close down, what in the world were you expecting? But see what I'm saying? You're doing the same thing. You're causing a lot of people to imbibe error. Well, what is it that we're teaching? Well, one thing that you're not teaching, you know, there is something besides teaching. You cannot teach something and also be letting people be in error. If you're not teaching the truth on marriage, divorce, and remarriage, well, you're basically letting people be in error. So you're actually allowing a lot of error and a lot of children to suffer, a lot of husbands and wives to suffer, our nation to plummet. Are you evangelizing? No. You know, I saw a guy on Polishing the Pulpit. He's actually supposedly working as an evangelist in Pohnpei. And he gets on and talking about that you shouldn't that door knocking is not something that you should do because of the danger. Listen, I've been to Pohnpei. I worked right next to Pohnpei in an island we're going to look at here in just a minute. And danger? The danger in a Pacific island? The Polynesian people can be a bit dangerous, but you have to get them really riled up, like on a football field. Samoan, Hawaiian, but going door to door, man, the Mormons are everywhere out there. So here we are. Now you say, what are you talking about? Look at this, Acts 21:29. This is what the people who saw Paul in the temple trying to work through a process to get the people who disbelieved that he was doing any good. We got several years between this and Acts chapter 9. And people are still saying that, you know, he's a bad man. And you know one of the reasons they're saying he's a bad man? Let me see if I can keep this going. Can you stay with me just a second? I called a gentleman yesterday, an elder, and I asked him what he think about the idea of supporting me. And so, as I was talking to him, I reminded him that for at least a year, maybe more, someone that I had been involved in training in evangelism had been working for them. Had not been to school anywhere. He comes in and they basically give him a salary so that he'll do personal evangelism because they were so impressed with his ability. So I'm saying, would you be willing to support me? Would you all be willing to support me? And so, I'm basically talking along. And, I spent the majority of the conversation. When I finally got off, I said, I need to go now. I'm pulled over on the side of the road and I got another at least 100 miles to go here before I get where I'm going. And I said, all I feel like I've done is just talk about myself for the last hour. And he kind of laughed. But he was quizzing me. And I allowed it. I said, do you have any problems with me? And, he basically talked to me for at least an hour and maybe more about supposed things that he had heard about me. And that's why I'm saying, now I'm not saying anything about him. I asked for it. I basically was saying, would you, they had offered to support me in the past, and I deferred and asked them to support a couple of guys that Caleb and I had been working with previously, who then got on broadcast and whatnot. And yes, that is the kind of people that we are. We don't just take the money just because it's offered to us. We deferred and had it sent somewhere else, and the young guy did some tent meetings. He's been on television in several different counties, named Matt Smith. And Vince, I don't know that I can remember Vince's last name, and somebody might text me that. Not, great guys. And so, but here's my point. Supposed Paul is basically in cuffs here. And these people are screaming their heads off. They're having a fit in Jerusalem. He's brought money for the famine-stricken individuals, for the poor of Judea, and he's planning on giving these alms to the people, and he doesn't do it himself, or he didn't come up with it, but there was a plan that was put together how he might be able to get some of the people not to think so badly about him because he was eating with Gentiles, which in their mind, that meant that he was not teaching the customs, the law of Moses. And one of the things that the elder that I was talking to said to me, he said, you could tell he hated to ask me this. He said, I've heard you've been kind of fooling around with the Pentecostals. Is that really true? And I said, you mean like eating with Gentiles and things unclean and things of that nature, and not going to the synagogue when I happened to be in a town where there was a synagogue? And he kind of laughed and he said, yeah, something like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you really want to know, I have been spending a lot of time, 24 years to be exact, with this one group, and lately a lot of time. And so, here's the thing. There are people saying that I have actually converted to the Truth of God organization, First Church of our Lord Jesus Christ, 5th Avenue in Philadelphia, with Gino Jennings as their founder and their supposed apostle. And a lot of people are saying, they actually are saying they don't know. Now, there are a few people out there. I've got a friend over in Fayetteville, and he's a military man. And I see him on Facebook taking up for me. His name, I used to know him as Stevie. And if he's got another handle, so does everybody else on YouTube or Facebook, that's his business. But anyway, he's taken up for me. And, it kind of would take a military man to take up for what's going on, in a situation like this. So, for they had seen before with him in the city Trophimus, an Ephesian, whom they supposed that Paul had brought into the temple. He didn't bring him into the temple. They just saw him in town with him. And so they end up saying, well, he brought him in the temple. And, they're going to have him killed if they can. And that's what I'm saying. What is wrong with y'all? Really and truly, what is wrong with y'all? I mean, what has in any way convinced you that after all of these years, living overseas twice, my wife bearing our baby son Caleb in a veterinarian clinic, you might as well say. I mean, a lot of you wouldn't take your inside animal, to the hospital in the 90s in Majuro, Marshall Islands. And we work over there, we come back here, then we go back there, leave our daughter behind and our grandchild behind here in Martinsville, and then come back to Martinsville, and have been in this area evangelizing. The Church of Christ is a household name, wasn't even known before that. And why are you supposing, because I am infatuated with Gino Jennings, that I have converted? I don't understand that. And here's the thing. What would you do? Can you please tell me, if you had the opportunity to speak in front of a congregation of, let's say, 700 people, and you knew that it was going to broadcast, it's up to 130,000 views now, what I said in that assembly, let me ask you what you would do. Well, no, before you even start, I'm going to tell you, no, I don't want to hear it, because you would never be there. That's just it. You would never be there. And so, can I ask you to just think about a couple of things? This is where I was in the Pacific. This is a nice map that our producer put up that shows you Northern Marianas. And island called Chuk, or also known as Truk, and Palau. And then I'm going to put up overlay another island called Korsrai. Now I know you can look at that and you'll say that doesn't spell Korsrai. Well, you don't speak their language. It is a Carolina island. And you think about me. Today, I was not assembled with brethren. I was 150 miles away from here. And the 3 churches of Christ that are in this area, the area where I was, they don't want to have anything to do with me. They don't want us to ever advertise that they're the Church of Christ on television. They've already told the owner of the TV broadcast, a Jew, on one occasion to tell me to stop advertising the Church of Christ at all. And so what I actually did is turned it around, and you're not going to like this. And it's like, what would you do? Well, number one, you wouldn't be on TV. Number 2, you wouldn't be on live TV. Number 3, you and the Jew would not be friends, most likely. It's just like, people just don't seem to be able to make friends with people. That dude loved me. One of the reasons is because we pay our bills. And it's very expensive, great opportunity. And so I just started telling people, look, these 3 over here that wear the name Church of Christ, they're not the Church of Christ. At least they're not anything like what I'm preaching, because if they were, they'd be at least letting me tell you that they exist. And then one of them gets himself on the air, and a commercial is made out of him by the owner of the broadcast station way down here, 150 miles away in Martinsville. The owner of the broadcast station here is so intrigued by what's going on, he goes over there himself, and they put the guys on camera and ask the question. Why do I bring this up? I wasn't in the assembly. Well, Johnny, you weren't in an assembly in Rocky Mount, and so, I'm a bit worried about you. Well, let me ask you this. When I worked in Korsrai, there's no Church of Christ in this country. The Church of Christ has never been established in this country. And to my knowledge, nobody had ever been in this country to begin to evangelize. It was a work that was offered to me first time, and I flew in, and I basically am talking to the immigration personality or the one in charge, and next thing you know, I find myself under house arrest. And I don't know how long I'm going to be in this particular situation. Well, how did that happen? Well, as things go, probably 150 years ago, whalers came through there, and the islands, the Korsraians, all caught smallpox or measles or whatever, and they almost dwindled down to nothing. I think there was like maybe 300 people left. And the Protestant people that came in convinced them that it was because they hadn't obeyed the Protestant doctrine. And so next thing you know, the only thing you got on the island is a Protestant church, which ends up being something like the United Church of Christ. It actually came out of New York, up in the New England area back in the day. And so these people were mostly Protestant. They had let the Jehovah's Witnesses in. Mormons were in. And so they asked me, as I'm showing them my passport, they said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I am going to be having some Bible studies. And they said, well, what church are you with? And I said, the one you read about in the Bible. And I was prepared to show them that information. And the next thing you know, I am under house arrest. Well, I missed the assembly, being under house arrest. What would you do? Would you have broken out of jail to go and assemble with who? There is no church on this island. I had to wait until the elders in Atlanta, Georgia, were able to get back in touch with these people, and a letter was sent. It was either probably a fax, because I certainly wasn't under house arrest that long, but a fax was sent, something was sent, where they put it on a header. The Forest Park Church of Christ, the bishops of the Forest Park Church of Christ are saying that we have sent Johnny Robertson over to this particular island, and he represents us. Now, I know some people be having a cow. Bishops. Did they really say bishops? Absolutely they did. They are bishops. And bishop carries a whole lot of clout when you're talking to people that are Protestants. And so, what ended up happening? Well, I didn't miss assembly, but the magistrate for the particular area where I landed, where the airport is, was so intrigued by what was going on. He said, in order for me to let you do anything, you're going to have to, I'm going to have a talk with you. And so I asked him, why not just let me have a Bible study with you? And we'll see what happens. I had 2 Bible studies with him, and he told me I could go the entire island. Nobody would bother me. And that's basically what I was doing there. And so when I would assemble on a Sunday with people that were not Christians. What do you mean, Johnny? I was studying I was in an island that was virgin territory. But there is one thing that actually was in my favor. There was a man who had been to school in Guam as a university student, and people in Guam, members of the Church of Christ, my brother happened to live in Guam, and I'm pretty sure that he was a member of that same congregation when he was in the Air Force. I don't know that he came into contact with this man. But this young man obeyed the gospel in Guam, and it had been about 20 years since that time. And he actually heard that somebody claiming to be in the church that you read about in the Bible had come to Kosovo, and come to find out he was a congressman in Kosovo. Now, I'm just saying, what would you do? You're basically looking at me sideways because I didn't assemble, because I was involved in evangelizing people who are going to be together on Sunday. Well, couldn't you have done it at a better time? How about you come over here and start evangelizing this area? And, or better yet, show me the evangelism that you've been doing for the last 20 years. And maybe I will consider changing my ways, but it's doubtful. Any more than Paul would stop eating unclean things with the Gentiles, just because the people that were already saved, that would be Jewish Christians, were having a problem with what he's doing. Listen, I have a task that I don't care what any of you say. I don't care what you think. And the Lord is going to provide a way, the money, everything that we need if we're willing to be faithful enough to stick with it. Can you imagine? I just can't, there's no way to describe when this gentleman's name is Akira. When Akira found me, he said, I am so glad you are here. He said, I have been telling these people for 20 years that there is a church that you read about in the Bible. He said, I won't assemble with anybody. They think I'm crazy. They think I don't even believe in God. He said, I'm not going to be involved with these folk. I'm not going to go back to the Protestant church, any of that kind of stuff. He said, I'm going to wait for someone to finally bring the gospel to Kosovo. Now, would you have not gone there because it wasn't church and anybody to worship with? And you'd be guilty of not worshiping with the saints? Well, you and your wife could. My wife didn't go with me to this place. Excuse me. Now, let me go a little bit further. Let's get just a little bit. Let's get a little bit under your. It's like, I know some people y'all think that we just try to get you stirred up. Well, really, we do. I'm trying my best to get you stirred up so that you'll at least think about what you're doing to me if you are supposing that I am converting to this and you're spreading it around, or you're also talking about you're questioning. And let me tell you, the majority of it has been women. Man, the women that I am close to, that have been watching the broadcast for years, that just had to know if I really was doing what was supposed. It's like, y'all must be out of your mind if you think that I have the time. I just told you my schedule for the last few days to take phone calls. Caleb's in the car with me a week before last, and we're making a round trip from here in a car to Tampa, Florida, and around to Orlando, up Daytona, Jacksonville, and into Atlanta to take care of several different things. And he's hearing me on the phone with these women. basically quizzing me. And it's just like, I just finally got to the point where I said, don't you ever ask me anything like that ever again. If you want to believe that there is something up with me, then, that's your prerogative. I'm going to give you this verse, and really it goes for all of y'all. And somebody says, well, we're supposed to try the spirits. Listen, I already have plenty of fruit, and if you hadn't tried it by now and figured it out, if I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing, then I don't need you around me. But here it is, John 7:12. And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him. For some said, he's a good man. Others, nay, but he deceives the people. You got a choice. Either you think I'm a good man or I'm deceiving the people. And you know what? If you think I'm deceiving the people, don't be calling me up. That's your prerogative. But my military friend says, why don't we wait this thing out? Johnny's been around for a pretty good while. He got a good track record, and, he may have a plan. I got inside, didn't I? And now I'm about to invite you to let me see where this was, if I actually put this in my presentation. Let's see. Here it is. I'm about to invite you to have your chance. Let's see what your preacher can do. Lo and behold, the Southwestern Regional Conference is on March the 7th through the 9th, 2025 in Big D. Those of you who are not from Texas, that means Dallas. We'll let this play so you can see it. You might be saying, why are you advertising for Gino Jennings? I'm advertising for you. I'm advertising for someone who has the everything together, and I'll call one of them out. He is the preacher at Wilson Road outside of Houston. And I'm not going to call his name. I could. I don't remember it right now, to tell you the truth. He's been giving me advice, and so, you know what? Here's what I will do. If you will get your preacher, you and your preacher, a bunch of you, load up and come to 2201 North Stemmons Freeway, Dallas, Texas, to the Hilton Resort. I don't know how you pronounce that. I don't even need to know. You can spell it. You come to the resort, and I guarantee you Gino Jennings will let you in. And I can just about guarantee you, I will just go ahead and go out of my way, out on a limb. Some of your preachers, I would introduce to Gino Jennings and him put you on the platform and let you do your thing. Now, some of you I wouldn't. The guy at Wilson Road, I would not do that for him. And some other individuals that are in Philadelphia running just berserk and supposing all kinds of things about me, I wouldn't help you get on the platform either. But I'm saying you could actually see your preacher, especially if he is running us down, you can see your preacher get a chance to do all the things that he says that I should do in such a situation. And you might say, well, why do you think that? I already know he's told me to my face that he's going to set aside time for he and I to get together again to further discuss the Godhead. Are you having a discussion with a local pastor in your area? Oh, I can't call him a pastor. What would you say? Would you try to parse it out? And I'm not going to call him pastor. I'm going to say Mr. whatever. Well, you do whatever you do when you do it. But I haven't seen you doing anything, so give me a break, would you? And see, you're being like Ananias. You're basically saying, we have heard all these things, and yet Jesus has chosen this particular individual to do great things with the Gentiles, with the king, with kings, and with Israel. And yet you got these people who are stacked up, trying their best to hinder the work that some people are trying to do. Now, Caleb, I know you're watching. I hope that I'm being as nice with the tongue lashing, somebody's going to say, as you were today, because you were really putting it out there, and so was Joey. I've been saying that's always the case with Joey. It's always a fantastic preacher. But both of them were on the same roll this morning. And I just felt, man, all the stuff that people were told, it just was told in such a fashion. Well, Johnny, he's a bit sarcastic. I don't mean to be. But I'm a bit tired tonight, and I'm really tired of this stuff, especially when come March, I'll be back in Texas again, Lord willing. And then I want some of the individuals also to think about too, when you hear me in these places. For instance, I actually plan to go into Arizona again. Why are you running around into all these different places? I mean, if we did support you, I don't know that we would want you running over to Arizona. What do you need to be in Phoenix for? Have you ever read that Jesus said, I was sick, and what? And they said, and when saw we thee sick, Lord? Well, when you saw one of the least of these, you see me. I have a brother over there that I was involved in teaching who has never been married. He is an only child. Both of his parents have passed. Pretty much all of his friends, a lot of them have passed, and he has cancer. And I've gone to see him when he didn't have cancer because he had poor health for quite some time. And so if I get a chance to encourage him, do you know that he has sent people from Colorado and Florida over to our tent meeting? And the sister that came from Orlando, was with him in Colorado at one time when he was in the denomination they were in. She's obeyed the gospel. And she is now help populating a congregation in Orlando. So if you might be saying, well, that really doesn't do any good to go over there. This guy, his name is Kim. Yeah, just excuse me, Kim, I am really tired. He has introduced me to so many different people, and he is trying to get in touch with all of the people that were involved with him in the denomination that he was in. And then, can I just go ahead and tell you some of my other plans? I plan to go to Tulsa. Man, the opportunity that God actually supplies to a person who doesn't mind. Let's see if I can think of his name now before I look. Oh, man. Olson. Thank you, Caleb. Kim Olson. I've been 6 weeks chemo and radiation at the same time. And he has just about finished, if he's not finished, 6 weeks of chemo and radiation. Had his tongue cut, the cancer out from under his tongue, and had radiation on his tongue, and he has had to take chemo. And I told him, I said, Kim, and you need to pray for Kim Olson. That's why I'm telling you this. I said, there is nothing that is more miserable than having a part of your body radiated that you have to use on a regular basis. And you might say, well, how do you know that? Because I had rectal cancer. That's how I know. Can you imagine a part of your body that has to be used on a regular, you just can't go without it. And they're radiating it, and it's horrendous. And he's scared he was going to die. He's in good hands. I think he got to go to Johns Hopkins or Mayo Clinic. But that's why I want to go and check on him, because there's not anybody else. Now, there is a congregation, non-institutional folk, that have visited him once, close to James White. The reason they know about him is because I went over there to see him, and I looked up a church. Well, someone on here is probably saying, well, why'd you go to a non-institutional church congregation? Because all the churches that you would call mainline are a bunch of liberals. That's why. I didn't find any individuals that was there. But I will say this about I think it's the 8th Street or the 9th Street church in Mesa. I went around the corner and met face to face with James White and put cameras on him inside of his building, and the preacher didn't go with me. Boy, that was discouraging, but he did have a lot of trash to talk about Florida College. And so, it's like everybody has their pet thing. Now let me get under your skin a little bit. For you folk, and particularly Reggie Young and Wilson Road, people who have said, why did Johnny have to ask Gino Jennings for help? Can I ask you this? Now, why did I pick out Reggie and the gentleman at Wilson Road? Because they're black. How many people were thrilled to death? Get your quotes up, air quotes. Are you ready? Thrilled to death during the 60s to see Reverend Martin Luther King come to their town and assist them with the civil rights movement? Why didn't y'all go to the local Church of Christ for that? Because they wouldn't help you, that's why. And that's the exact same reason why I'm asking Gino Jennings if he would mind coming back into this area to use his clout against these awful Pentecostals, Baptists, Methodists, all of the denominations that you used to find in the phone book. I'm willing to ask him, would you be willing to use your clout and actually get them all stirred up, name their names? He will do it. He has given his word to me that he would do it. So you might still be a little bit bewildered. Well, Johnny, why was it so important for you to be in Rocky Mount this morning? Couldn't you have done that later? Well, for one thing, it's none of your business how I do what I do. You really need to stop and think about that. Are you doing anything close to this? And the end of the story may help you. Here's the end of the story. Let me play this, and then we'll do some introducing here.
People that know me will tell you that when Johnny makes a mistake, he tries to correct it. And it wasn't a mistake, I don't think. It was just pure ignorance. I made friends with a man named Finch in the Rocky Mount Temple.
Okay. Now, I didn't say that it wasn't a mistake. It sounded like I did, but I clipped the tape. What I actually had said, when I make a mistake, then I corrected and I apologized. My own conscience to Gino Jennings. And then I said the next thing wasn't a mistake. It was just ignorant, stupid. And it involved this man named Finch. How do you spell his name? He said, just like Grinch, my name is Finch. And he was at the Rocky Mount location one time when I was over there doing evangelistic work in the projects around there, knocking doors in the projects. Do you knock doors in the project? Reggie, do you knock doors in the projects? I'll be getting a lot of mail from Reggie. I was knocking doors in the projects, trying to tell them about what does the Bible say in the church that you read about in the Bible, and asking them, did they know Gino Jennings, and did they know that I was going to have a debate with him? And so I come across Finch, and someone from Colorado just sent me a text and said they'd like to support the work that I do. And what do you think about that? I find Finch mowing he's on a riding lawnmower, and he comes over and we start talking. And he is the individual, this young man right here, is the individual that told me when I was talking to him about how I was looking at Gino Jennings these days, 24 years later, that I liked him, and he told me that Gino Jennings loves you. And that changed my life. It just basically, it set me on a different trajectory. It moved me into a position where I end up addressing the body that was assembled on the 26th of January on 5th Avenue in Philadelphia. And no, I wouldn't do it different. I would say the same thing over and over again. And people are hearing it by the tens of thousands. And there are people that don't even see are not even seeing his website, that are making videos about it and claiming that I created an atmosphere where he didn't even talk about first church doctrine in that particular sermon that he went on and preached after he praised me and agreed to come to Martinsville. Now, I'm still thinking about folk that would love to have had Martin Luther King come and help them out. Members of the Church of Christ, maybe, or persons who are members of the Church of Christ now but weren't then. You know, we live right next door to Danville, Virginia. Danville, Virginia is it was the last headquarters for the Confederacy. We have had the southeastern head of the KKK living in this area for years. And on one occasion, the KKK in this area challenged me, and I had cancer at that particular time, and I asked James Oldfield to assist me and go ahead and debate them. And we had that debate, and I'm just saying, this is a very rough area. One of the sisters that moved here from California, her dad is from Cuba, and he told her, he said, oh, I don't know if he says words of endearment or if he just says, Cynthia, don't move to Virginia. Don't you remember what happened in Charlottesville? There's a bunch of racist people over there. Well, there are. In Danville, Virginia, Martin Luther King came twice to Danville, Virginia. And we know people that were in that situation. One of the preachers, one of the pastors, he and his wife were beaten on the streets in Danville, Virginia. Dogs let loose, big German Shepherds. Now, I'm saying, if you're a member of the Church of Christ now, and you weren't then, would you give me a break? Because you know you would have been glad to see Martin Luther King back in those days, even though he was supposedly a reverend in the Baptist church or whatever denomination he claimed. You see what I'm saying? Is this not making you think, what's wrong with y'all? Why would you want to give me such a hard time? You know, the individuals that I'm working with, just let me ask you to think about this as we close. I'm right where I wanted to be. There was a temple, that's what they call it, dedicated at Pine Bush, New York, this past year. And I met the minister. Can I get away with calling somebody a minister? In an accommodative way. They don't call themselves anything else. If they're working with Gino Jennings, they're called ministers, because that's what they're doing. They're actually there ministering to these people. And do you know, these guys, a lot of them, and I'm pretty sure that I'm finding out that the majority of them aren't receiving money. This particular man that owned the building in Pine Bush that you're seeing there, I believe he gave it to Gino Jennings, and he began just working in the organization. And when I was in Houston lately, because they had a big blow up in Houston, he was the one that was brought in, and I'm basically looking for him right now because I am pretty sure that I have let's just go here. That's him. He flew all the way from New York City, or New York, Pine Bush, New York, on a Saturday to Houston. He assembled with them twice. On Sunday, he was sick, and then he flew back to New York. And I had a chance to talk to him. A wonderful fellow. You're calling him a wonderful fellow? He's a false teacher. Well, I will tell you, he is a wonderful fellow. And he is a friend of mine. He is a doctor, and he has converted to this particular faith, and he is not paid. He doesn't take any money, and he said the churches that grow the fastest in the organization are the ones that the ministers don't have to be paid. Because if the minister has to be paid, then they don't really have the money to be doing the evangelism that they would normally do in the setting where the minister is not taking any money, because he's taking it. Well, I'm not saying that you're not supposed to be able to live with the gospel. I mean, Paul said that in 1 Corinthians 9. And so, for those of you who don't think I need to be going in all these different places, I don't need to take my wife with me most of the time. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, you just keep reading down through there, and it says, I have really the power to take my wife with me. I have the right to lead about a wife, and I have the right to not be burdened on my own doing this kind of stuff. So, I was able to talk to this gentleman. I apologize, I can't remember his name. And at length, and taped it, and found out more information. And I have to just tell you, there are a bunch of no good, just worthless religious people. There are some religious people that really do try to do a good job at what they're doing, and they're sincere about what they're doing. There are a lot of them in there that just, especially around here, they're just like the drug dealers. They're players, and they're trying to get money, and they're hustlers. They run women, the whole bit. But you know, the folk in this organization, a lot of them that I have come into contact with, they're very, very moral individuals. And this particular gentleman, He's not taking any money. He is a doctor. And they're growing up there. And so if I were going to have to choose which denomination, which sect that I would want to be in the area, 24 years ago, I was satisfied when I first got here that First Church of Our Lord Jesus Christ, as they call it, that it should not be here. And he challenged me, and I went to the television station with intention of him coming with me, but he didn't come with me, but I got to be there anyway. And he had his own airtime. But 24 years later, you can just grit your teeth and scream and holler at the television and run me down all you want to. All you're doing is helping me. But here's what I think you won't do, and this is what I'm encouraging some of you to do, is to tell your preacher to come to 2201 North Stemmons Freeway, Dallas, Texas, between the 7th and the 9th of March, and show me how to do it. Now that'd be good. And then those of you who do actually end up watch your pastor, not your pastor, they act like pastors, preacher, not do it. Now, there's a school of preaching that's not too far from Stemmons. There's more than one school of preaching in the general area. The let's see how this is called again. The Southeastern, is that what that was? Southwestern Regional. It is actually just developed, and it covers Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas. And there are 2 or 3 schools of preaching in that area, which this particular convocation, or whatever they want to call it, represent. There are 2 or 3. And there's one big preacher I'm talking about. His name is Terrence Brownlow Dindy. Now, he is the director of a school of preaching, and he has pretty much self-proclaimed what he can and can't, what he can do and what we can't do. And I would like to invite Terrence to the event. No, I'm not a part of it. I will get some time with Gino Jennings, and while I'm talking to him, I guarantee you, if he found out that there was a preacher of such note and running a preacher school, he would let you do your thing. So how about y'all spread all that through Texas and see if we have anyone that can help me out, because you really would be helping me out. And I don't wish that he wouldn't do well. I'm just saying, I know what's being said, and I know who's saying it. And so this would be your opportunity, and I'll do my as a matter of fact, if I got a message from Terrence, I would just go ahead and ring up on my cell phone that has Gino's number on it, or call him at home. I have that too. And if he's not at home, I can ask his wife where he is, and she'll tell me, and I'll track him down and see if I can get back to you within the next few days so that you won't miss it, because March the 7th is coming up. Now you tell me that's not helping the brotherhood. If we could get a bunch of members of the church to be represented and hear a worthy individual. I know Terrence Dindy can preach the gospel. The question is, there is a question. And I'll be praying that he does. And if he does, I'll be praying that he does a good job, because, honestly, I am very tired of going it alone. Caleb helps me with the broadcast, and we thought our heating system was going to be broken down again today, and we were planning both to go together and meet Mr. Finch. And so tonight, I hope that you have enjoyed the broadcast. I have certainly enjoyed being with you. I hope that I was not too rough, and I hope and pray some individuals had a change of heart in regard to the work that we're doing, and you find yourself not supposing things any longer, and you would repent of being like Ananias, trying to talk Jesus out of one of the greatest evangelists that we find in the New Testament, a special chosen person to go to the Gentiles. Thank you for being with us. God bless you. Always ask for it. What does the Bible say? Good night.